Hey guys, I'm live now. So this is Umang again, and I'm trying to have my podcast being set up. So this is one of the first podcasts I'm bringing it out to the public. And the topic for today's podcast has to be why action is so important, and the fact that I'm doing this podcast and launching this podcast and putting myself out there is a testament to the fact that I believe action is paramount and action is important. And although planning is also a very essential part of how you do things, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So planning is important, but action is equally or more important in many cases of life. And I totally believe that in order to live a life purposefully and in order to live life to its most extent, you have to give up the sense of self when you're performing an action, and totally immerse in the vibe and totally immerse in doing that action with your utmost intent and focus, like I'm trying to do right now. The whole focus is to bring out the best in this podcast and deliver my thoughts as cogently, as clearly as possible, while also delivering the message in the sharpest, tackiest, and most uh, proper manner as possible. So, as we know, as I've said, that action is very important, but how do you do it? First, as I mentioned, it's very important to immerse yourself in the experience and let go of the feeling of being judged or judging others or judging how the task is. It's very important to immerse yourself in the experience of doing the task and doing it at the best of your ability, regardless of how you thinking of how you would perform or how you're performing in the moment or how others are judging you or uh, other meta level of thinking and bringing the light upon the action. Because when you're in the doing the action, you are the performer, and as a performer, it's your duty. I believe it's a duty to the action because you get to do the action, so you have to perform at the best of your ability. So that's what I believe in, and uh, that's the purpose of, or let's say mini purpose of that particular moment for you, and that's what you got to do. Now, how do you do it? Well, logically speaking, if all of your mental bandwidth or emotional or mental capacity is being exhausted while doing the task, essentially you would hit a state where you would be giving your best at the moment. You can definitely improve upon it by doing that action multiple times, but at the given moment, you would be doing that action with the most intent and focus and the absolute focus that you could give to that particular task. And that is what is vital to do an action in that is what that is what is most important to the action itself, because you have to do the action for the act of doing action and not introspectively thinking over it or thinking about the action in itself. You are the performer, you get to do the action, so you got to do it with an absolute intent to do that task, even even if it might fail. But it's absolutely important to have the intent to be focused and and give your best, and with the intent to give your absolute best. So, coming to examples which basically can help one figure out. Uh, Give me a second. So, resuming back, sorry, I got some important messages, so I had to cater to them. But yeah, so for me too, I'm still trying to learn to compartmentalize and uh, take the action for the sake of taking action and not introspectively reminisce about it. So that's that. Coming to the point of examples, there's this movie called Without Limits. If you've heard about him, it's about a really good front runner named Steve Prefontaine, who used to be one of the most remarkably charismatic yet most championed runner in the American history, and he showed from time to time that in his own words, it's he says that the real purpose of running is not to win the race, but is to test the limits of the human heart. And there's much to be said for that. If you consider what's hidden in that particular meaning or message, is the fact that you have to immerse yourself in the process for the sake of the process and let go of the entitlement or belief of the notion of I to the action, and just be the performer and do the action for the action itself, because it's a duty and it's a privilege for taking action. So uh, Steve Prefontaine used to believe in himself and believe in doing giving his absolute best to the thing he did, which is running. He said running is nothing but a work of art, which I totally believe in too, is that whatever you do, it has to be like an art. It has to be with the full intent focus and the whole energy focused and tunnel zoned into performing that task as well as you can in the moment, and maybe analyze it later, but at the moment that's the best you can do, and that's what you gotta do. Same goes with bhag milkha bhag, which is like a very in English it's a run milkha run, if I'm translating correctly. Milkha Singh used to be a really uh, uh, good runner, a really renowned runner back in India, and he was given the title of Flying Sikh. He used to be a remarkable runner, and he inspired millions in India to focus on their health and bring pride to the nation, as well as to themselves, with an absolute focus to never give up, give your 100% to the race, and uh, operate from the highest principles and moral ethics of a personality of a person. So these both examples, although related to running, have an overarching theme of operating from more uh, higher set of belief standards, higher belief standards, and operating from the principle detached from the self sense of I or me, and rather working from the perspective of we, and how can we give our best to the certain process, and also maybe inspire others or contribute to the society in some sense, which is a really remarkable thing to do, which is as close to altruistic as you can get in the society, which I find is really, which also connects to me at a much deeper or core level. I'll also try to give an example from my own life. So back in the days, I used to be preparing for JEE, which is like Joint Entrance Exam in India, and it's supposed to be a really hard exam, where approximately like 1 million people appear for the entrance exam, which is called JEE mains, and about 10% of the people advance to the next stage, which is called JEE advanced. And then when you crack that exam, you have to be among the top 5,000 or 7,000, 8,000 people to score a seat at a really prestigious institution with the type of uh, degree you would like to pursue. So combine these two things. It was a really hard thing. It's a really hard thing to even now, get into even now. Uh, there's a lot of good school. There are a lot of good. There are good schools, but then it's the competition is very hard. So I obviously had a dream to go into these institutions because I was always a technically inclined person, and I was always of the notion that uh, I was kind of a notion to outcompete others in the field of being smart. That's my thing. I like to outsmart people in whatever way uh, I can do so. So that was my way, and also it's obviously it gives you a pride to have defeated so many people and go into studying at such prestigious institutions. So I was preparing it for about heavily very focusedly intently for about in my last in my 10th, 11th and 12th, which is like 3 years before the exam, and you only get 3 hours in the exam to prove yourself, which is kind of uh, hypocritical, but I think it's also a reality of life that many times short things play play a huge role in your life, and got to be having got to having you got to have enough uh, practice in your baggage to perform well regardless of what will happen on the D-Day. So the same thing happened with me. When I was preparing for this exam for the second time, I really obviously I passed this the first time too, but my rank was not the best. It was about like 18,000 in like all the exams, so it's like yeah, I couldn't get into the best schools. So I tried to like appear back into the exam and see if I could perform better. But this time I was even more focused, even more. I had to give it my all. I decided I will not let myself down and think I could have done better. This was my chance to prove myself that regardless of what happens, I need to give my best shot, and that's what I did. So I remember precisely while preparing for this exam, I was trying to see how can I improve or what can happen on the exam day that could dwindle or that could exacerbate my results or that could hamper my speed or hamper how I performed on that on the test. So I took the worst case scenario and practiced a shit out of them. I even in fact printed out bubble sheets, bubble filling charts. I did almost 2 exams every day, mock tests every day of the hardest exams I could find on the internet, on the different coaching material, different exercises I could find. I and the remaining time I used to prepare. I used to read. I used to do questions. I used to read theory. I used to revise. I used to just cram the shit out of everything. So it's a really large, expansive material like you will not even imagine, and you have to perform, encapsulate all of that and give your best on in the 3 hours, which is like a really remarkable feat, at least for me, which I think is like goes out to show that what is possible. And I think that I'm also proud of that, that I'm able to like I was able to encapsulate and just so much information and give my best on the D-Day. So anyways, I was preparing for the exam, and I precisely remember I used to take the print out of the bubble sheet, used to solve the exam like it would be like an actual test, actual 3 hour test, run the timer, and even you will not even imagine I was studying when it's peak hot summers, because the exam happens in the summers and you got to deal with it. There is no air conditioners in India, in the schools at least. It's like 40-45 degrees Celsius in the heat, in the blowing windy hot wind afternoon, and it's just terrible. So and yeah, there's so many people in the classroom, it's like humid too sometimes. It can be really terrible. So I knew that this was going to be the case, or this could be the case at least. So I had to prepare for the worst. So what I essentially did is this: for the last 1 or 2 months, I switched off the fan in my home. I clearly switched it off, and I opened all my windows, opened the door, and I used to study and take my exam in the in from 12 to 6, which is the hottest period where you could give the exam, and generally the exam also happens around that time. So that was my uh, intention, that I need to go and prepare for the worst, so that on the D-day, if that happens, I'm prepared for every single thing that could occur to me on that day, and I still perform to my best of my ability, regardless of whatever situation arrives. And I remember my mom used to come, and obviously it was so hot, so my mom and sister used to sit in the other room and work and stuff. So they used to try to call me that, yeah, it's, you do not have to like grind so much, you can come and relax a bit. I did used to go for like 5 minutes sometimes in the break, but as far as I remember, most of the times I used to skip on that and just grind the shit out of it, because I needed to be tolerant and needed to be perspicacious and strong enough to not be able to heed to the wrong voices of it's hot, or you lost because you there was so much heat, or there was no fan over your head, or there was so much it was claustrophobic, or it was, yeah, I didn't want those voices to come in my head. I knew that if I had prepared for it enough, I would be able to do it in the D-day. And guess what happened in the JEE mains exam. In my classroom, everybody had a fan over them, but my fan wasn't working. So I was like, well, I already knew this was gonna happen, and see, I already prepared for it, so I don't give a damn about it. Obviously, my ass was sweaty by the end of the exam, but I mean, I prepared for it, so it didn't matter to me. And I almost did really well for the exam. Got really good marks, so that was that. And I also did good in my JEE advanced exam, which was also like, it wasn't as good as I would ex- as good as I would have expected to go, but it was still a really good uh, thrust from my end. And yeah, so I absolutely believe that intent, focus, and being resilient in the face of adversity does wonders when you least expect it. So keep grinding, keep being on the path of purpose and our path of doing changes and bringing something out in the world which is new and possibly helps people, helps society, and also yourself in some way. But I, in my opinion, purpose has to be higher than the self. Otherwise, it doesn't come back in the ways you would like to have it have to go. Like, I know when you don't, from my personal experience, as far as I know, uh, if the purpose is not, whenever I have had purpose which is higher than myself, I've had it come back to me in the ways I would not even have expected. It would come back to me in 10 times more fulfilling ways that I would imagine. If you help someone in need, if you help someone or build something which is going to give out something to the society, the fulfillment and the contentment that you feel itself is enough to uh, to hold your head high and say that yes, I did that. And you kind of sense of you kind of feel a sense of fulfillment, and uh, doing something more than self is just, I think it's more experiential and people who do that, they can actually feel what I'm trying to say. And I also feel it comes back to you in the ways you least expected, and eventually it's a win-win game rather than win-lose, which people try to play in when they just think about themselves and are very self-centered. I also believe that you need to be self-centered in the ways that you don't get harmed by people who are malicious players in the game of life. But I think this should not restrict you to not being able to put yourself out there and uh, not contributing in the ways you can actually do and not improving yourself. So I think action is very important. Recapping it, action is very important, and how you do it, you have to be, you have to have your action somewhat. You have to see the action somewhat in the line of how your purpose is linked. Uh, you have to find how it would help you serve your main purpose. It might look anti on this on the face of it, but it might on the totality, if you know this is going to help your purpose, then absolutely you need to see your action in the line of that. And then when you see that, you need to perform your action with an absolute intent and focus that you have in the moment, and give it your best and see what happens. So this is what actually I've been practicing since last 6 7 months. I do have my down days, which I think is expected at least in the initial part of it. But I'm at least even putting this podcast out there is an artifact, and uh, is is a testament to the world that I'm trying to I'm my focus is to improve every day, and uh, action is more important. I This could have been done better, I know, but I didn't spend like a whole day planning out how what to do for a 30 minute podcast, and rather I just switched on the camera, wrote down some pointers, and I'm trying to blurt out my experiences, or be, well, blurt out, I guess, but share my experiences in the most compact yet uh, dense yet very uh, rel- relevant manner, where people can connect to it and understand and also absorb it in their life. And I hope this also uh, this does something, this helps someone in their life, and I hope people find it interesting, and also they can improve on improve their lives too when they see this. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next time with a different topic, and possibly improved version of Umang, and maybe better auditory skills, and an even more structured outline of what I'm going to say, what I'm going to portray, or uh, how things will go in the podcast. But thanks for now, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.